So, Russians at war. Thing that we talk a lot about on this channel, but this time it's not actual Russians at war, but a movie of the same name. Have you heard of such a movie, Mark?
Yeah, unfortunately, recently, I heard about this movie, and you know what? Last time we talked about how Russia Today and Russians invest money in Russian propaganda in the United States. This time, Canadians, with their money, with money of Canadian taxpayers, invest in Russian propaganda and invest in Russia Today employees in Canada, in propaganda in the West.
It's a very shitty circle of life, if you will. I mean, Elton John was not singing about that in Lion King. No,
absolutely
not at all. So, by the way, before we even start, the amount of money we're talking about, dear Canadian viewers, if you happen to pay any taxes in Canada, you will be interested to find that Canada has used 340,000 Canadian dollars, is an equivalent of 250 American dollars, from the Canadian Media Fund, a public-private partnership supported by the Department of Canadian Heritage, invested that in a Russian movie made by the person who has made her career on RT, which is Russia Today, which is a Russian state media.
Hi, sorry, a little disclaimer here. So we recorded this podcast on Tuesday, and on Wednesday and Thursday we received really major updates. So TVO, the Canadian organization which actually gave money for this movie about Russian soldiers, made a statement where they said that they listened to the feedback of Ukrainian Canadian community and they stopped airing and supporting Russians at war, this movie, which is great stance on this point. Good thing they reconsidered. But after that, we received the updates from Toronto International Film Festival, which says that they don't give a shit. And also, they have a big statement where they say these things. Our understanding is that it was made without the knowledge or participation of any Russian government agencies. In our view, in no way should this film be considered Russian propaganda. So, to be clear, this film is shot on Ukrainian occupied territories and in Russia. It tells a story about Russian soldiers, and it is physically impossible to shoot anything in Russia without Russian government agencies' participation. It is impossible, and any American who had spent time in Russian prison will say you that.
Little spoiler before we start. Unfortunately, or fortunately, I don't even know at this point, neither Mark nor I, not also many other people have actually seen this movie because it's unavailable. You cannot still see it. But it premiered in a Venice Film Festival where some people were unfortunate enough to see it. And now it is being premiered at the Toronto International Film Festival. So we're not going to be talking about the plot of this movie since we don't really know it. We only know it from other people's words. But we are also going to talk about Russians in culture and on movie festivals in Russia Today especially. And for that, we this time are not alone. We have invited Julia Sinkevich, who's a producer and who's also a co-founder of Ukrainian Film Academy. And she's going to give us her professional opinion on this topic so we don't sound very emotional like we usually do. Julia, hello. Nice to have you here.
Hello. Good to see you.
So, before we begin talking about this movie shortly and talking about certain concrete points, are there many Russian propagandists and Russians in the, movie industry abroad in the West in general? Are they feeling themselves fine there? How is it even possible that these things happen in 2024?
Well, I mean, they are a major film industry, and since I work in the film industry for many years, they were always the big part. They were everyone was always looking for what is made in Russia. This Russian films, Russian culture. It was always something a must-have for each festival in the program. Of course, after 2022, after the Russian invasion to Ukraine, it kind of changed, but changed because of the pressure from Ukrainian colleagues, and not entirely changed, but this movement of kind of boycotting or canceling or it's always a big debate about the term we are using actually when we are speaking about Russian culture and of not showing the films at the festivals, for example. But whatever you name it, it gave some results, and the arguments were really easy and really clear and understandable. They should be understandable for a civilized world. That actually all the films are serving Russian propaganda. All the films are generating some kind of income, whether it's financial income or non-financial income, like image, for example. Everything works for Russia, and it helps them or supports them in continuing the invasion and the massacre they're doing on the territory of Ukraine. So of course, to say no to that, Russian film industry is difficult. For film festivals, for cinephiles, for everyone who loves films or work in film. And also, a very important point is that Russia is a huge market. And films, especially like art house films, or any films actually, are not doing so well in the cinemas all over the world. And nobody wants to lose such a huge territory as Russia, in order to sell their films, to sell tickets to their films. So that's why it was and is difficult to kind of convince that it's simply not the time to deal with them, and they should be under sanctions, and there should be no films or business with them.
That's also like Russians are successfully penetrating the West with their culture, and this culture is not always, it's not just like, the movie about some woman crying over a dead body of her son and then taking her on. It's not that. Recently in Cannes, if I'm not mistaken, Kirill Serebrennikov, the Russian director, presented the movie about Eduard Limonov, who is actually based on the book by Eduard Limonov, who is Russian Nazi, like literal Russian Nazi, not just some kind of a guy and political figure who was always pro-war, who was always pro-Russian imperialistic expansion, who even participated in Serbian genocide in the 90s, and the same Kirill Serebrennikov, which his films were made on money of Abramovich, Russian oligarch living in the West, and he, in his press conferences, asked to leave sanctions from Abramovich. And it's not even funny anymore. It's like, what the hell is going on with the culture in the West? Is it?
I think you mean not funny. I think you even mean like it's not, you don't even have to like, they used to hide and now they don't even hide anymore. They're like, yeah, I'm a Russian fascist. Please lift sanctions of this Russian fascist who's gonna promote my Russian fascist work about Russian fascists. Yay! Like they're not even, and everybody's like, yay, this is so art house. This is such a deep art. Like, oh, deep Russian culture. We should, and like it's a topsy-turvy world, if you will.
But it's also like, it's a long process of creating this image, because like they take someone like Serebrennikov, who was under home arrest. Nobody is actually questioning why he was under home arrest. Was he because he was protesting against Putin? No. Maybe it was literally, like financial fraud that he was under arrest for. And then he is, taking, released, and then he is all of a sudden, a representative of Russian opposition, so-called, and he is also an artist, and, the art is out of politics. And it lasts for several years, and people who are not deeply informed about the processes, they do kind of believe like art has nothing to do with the politics. Festivals are saying that they are not, they don't want to be political, but at the same time, as you said, he goes on stage and he says political statements.
Yeah, and I mean, if we come back to the movie, which, again, because we haven't watched, we can't really discuss, the only thing I can say is, first of all, I mean, you don't even have to be claim to be like non-political, you literally finance a movie called Russians at War, which to every sane person everywhere in the world already is a kind of a political statement, because everybody knows what Russians are doing at war. It's not like they're fighting for their freedom from something. They literally invaded a country. Did anybody make a movie called Germans at War in like 40s? Did this happen? Because like you could go like, hey, this movie might be a reflection of what Russians have done and how they're sitting there and wrapping their hands around their heads and panicking how they're, wrong. But two things are contradicting that point. Number one, and I'm going to read to you now what this movie is about from a person who actually saw it. But two, isn't it, even if it was a reflection, isn't it a bit too early to make any sort of reflections while your people are still on other countries' soil murdering other people? Like, how is this? So this I'm asking, why isn't there a movie about Germans in the 40s, made in the 40s? But before we proceed, a very famous film person, critic, producer, also a director, Darya Bassel, has written a post about this. She has actually seen the movie in Venice, and it's a long post. We're going to leave it in the description down below so you can read it yourself. But what she said about it is crucial. She said, this film may mislead you into believing that it is anti-war film, one that questions the current regime in Russia. However, what I witnessed is a prime example of pure Russian propaganda. Here's why. And she goes on to explain that they never use the word invasion. They never say full-scale invasion, I'm sorry. They never mention that Russia ever invaded Ukraine before the full-scale invasion in 2022. And it appears in this movie that, this full-scale invasion 2022 was a shock. Like, that every Russian was like, oh my God, I can't believe we did this. We invaded a country in crazy, right? And then there is this narrative of this Ukrainian who lives in Russia and fights for Russia in Ukraine, which is also insane. So you will read this on your own and you will look into this.
Can I just add my favorite part of that?
Please.
Again, from the description which we have, that she, the director, she actually is shocked because she thought Russian haven't invaded anyone in a long time. Well, she actually has been shooting in occupied Donetsk city in Ukraine during Russian invasion previously in 2014. But it's weird, right? Am I right?
So, Yulia, to you, I have this question. Okay, we're sitting here, three of us, three Ukrainians who know our stuff, who has been talking about this forever. Do you have much experience explaining these obvious maxims to people from abroad, especially in your community that you said, like people in the community abroad, they're like, well, this is art, this is this, we shouldn't politicize. And how do they even how do these ideas coexist in their heads? Like, how is this even... Is it even explicable in any way, shape, or form?
Well, exactly like this. They just exist, And for example, if all these people who are mostly educated people, well educated, and they have their degrees at the best universities, and then they have these jobs at curating film programs for either festivals or film museums, whatever. But what they know everything like about Russian culture, because at their universities they had classes of Russian culture, and in these classes everything which was stolen by Russia is incorporated and called Russian. So of course, this huge complex of saying no to this, to this big culture which they don't even know, as we can say, is really something totally difficult to overcome. It's a collapse of their world. This is one thing. Another thing is also the fear. It's simply the fear of this big country which is aggressive and can use nuclear weapon anytime, and it's real. And they do kind of discuss that possibility, you know, they believe in this possibility, and they say, okay, it's better not to mess around with them, but rather, you know, to keep them. But also they say that so many artists were put in prison, for example, or followed by the authorities in different countries, and this is not something that, for example, the European Union would do. You know, this is not the value of the European Union, or not the value of the civilized world. So they keep telling this as mantra. Plus, they do have around people who, I mean, a couple of years ago it would sound totally impossible, but now I'm pretty much convinced that there are like agents, you know, who are native, I don't know, French, German, whatever, and they do work there, and they say this from their prospect. They say like, oh, this is art, you know, we cannot forbid that, this is art, and they push these ideas inside the societies. So it's really very, very challenging and very difficult to have these conversations, because in the end of the day they might hear and might analyze something if you have facts listed, or if they want to hear that, or you just get the burnout, you know, and that's what many of my colleagues did, because like whenever we check the program of the film festival, we're like, okay, again we have to write letters explaining really simple things from our point of view, and this film, Russians at War, it's an example how this propaganda became more inventive, and because it's been a couple of years already since the full-scale Russian invasion to Ukraine, so they had time also, you know, and they are quite inventive, and I'm sure there will be more of such examples in the near future.
So is this a lost fight then?
No, not at all. No, not at all.
Okay.
Like, you know, we could say that our war is a lost fight, but it's not, of course. I mean, I think that, yeah, we have to be that annoying for some people, maybe even, or aggressive, or but we have to keep telling that you know, white is white, black is black, and we have to also be inventive. And I should say that unfortunately, from Ukrainian side, we are very limited with the instruments and means. You know, we don't have such huge support from the state and such a backup from the state. No, not financially, not nor with other possibilities. Also, considering that our people are actually literally at the front line and are busy with that on the first place.
So it seems like the Canadian Media Fund, a public-private partnership supported by the Department of Canadian Heritage, should have given 340,000 Canadian dollars to some Ukrainian director to shoot a movie, because we actually need it, rather than to give it to some Russia Today propagandist who literally, and by the way, I was just looking at the Toronto International Film Festival website. She never fucking mentions she worked there. She's like, I used to work in the New York Times and the Washington Post and CBC, and it's my first debut. But like, why don't you be proud? Like, you're a Russian Canadian documentary filmmaker. Be proud. Tell us all who you worked for. Jesus Christ.
Oh man, it's not only that. It's actually 13 documentaries he at least participated in. And Russia Today is actively hiding them from their website, according to Twitter user Alek Kostur. And yeah, it's weird. They're trying to hide it. She worked there, and she when she's asked that, hey, you worked at RT, aren't you like concerned that someone will say that this film is propaganda? And she's like, no, it's not RT, it's RT documentary. It's like,
yeah, it's not Putin, it's Putin's daughter. Like, who cares?
Yeah, it's really weird, and it's not even like from the standpoint of security, it's weird that you gave money to someone with such past, right?
Because again, there is this narrative of, you know, we have to show another side of the conflict. And that's what I hear also from colleagues and funders or festivals. Like, we know Ukraine is right, let's say, yeah, but it's very interesting to know what is the motivation behind, those people who are participating in this war. We have to know this motivation. We have to see the other side, and it creates a totally different image. It's propagandist art.
I can actually buy this idea, right? I would love to see what Russians, I sometimes see the video Russians shoot themselves, like what Russians are talking about in their trenches. What are they thinking about? Why did they come to this war? What are their relatives think in Russia, right? It's just, I wouldn't trust with this film literal Russian propagandists. Rather, I would trust literally anybody else.
There is a Ukrainian film which participated at Berlin International Film Festival this year called Intercepted, based on the phone calls of Russians, and it is all about them. And basically, it is a portrait of Russians who are participating in the war and are doing war crimes in Ukraine. But again, this is either lack of information for those people who were evaluating this project, because they read the project on the stage of, synopsis or idea, whatever, and decided that such an idea needs to be funded because it shows the other side. I think that was the motivation behind it.
Well, yeah, because everybody's super tired of Ukrainians saying hey, it reminds me of that meme of this journalist standing and saying, ooh, look, a Russian, let's ask him about his motivation. And this creature is just scrolling, kill, kill, kill. Literally, they're like, ooh, what about this girl? What's she going to show us? Because Ukrainians are here you go. We'll show you these horrible people who kill our children 24/7. Hey, there's the other side. You want the other side.
It's like the most popular documentaries on Netflix are documentaries about mentally ill people, the psychos who kill how do they call
serial killers?
Serial killers. Yeah, serial killers, those guys. And it's and every time what's the reason for the serial killer to kill and rape all these women or something? But again, if you shoot a movie or a series, documentaries about serial killer, probably don't hire serial killer to shoot the documentary. Don't give him money for that.
Yeah, oh my God, you're so right. It's just crazy to me. I don't know. What about Ukrainian movies, though, Julia? What's the place of Ukrainian movies at international film festivals? Again, I've seen a lot of users lamenting the fact that Ukrainian media, for instance, has been covering heavily this instance of Russians at war at international film festivals. But also, not just apparently, but it's also true, there were some movies presented at international film festivals this year, not in the main program, but as a side kind of program. I personally even know one of the directors, Zhanna Ozirna. Her movie was premiered also, but we kind of overlooked that, and the Western media also overlooked that. Is this kind of a ongoing trend of war fatigue, or what is this that we don't get enough recognition from our friends abroad?
No, we do have some recognition, and also according to the time period of Ukrainian films being present at the international market, it's a very short time period, actually. It's only since 2014, more or less, that our films started to appear in the programs of the big film festivals. So, and for the film industry, it's really nothing. 10 years also, considering that we, in parallel, we had, Revolution of Dignity, Russian invasion. So everything is actually against Ukrainian films, development of Ukrainian film industry. But nevertheless, we have success. And I witnessed how our directors became more recognizable, and film programmers from the film festivals, they became much more curious in Ukrainian films and started to include them in their programs. Of course, since 2014, the key topic was the war in Ukraine. After 2022, even more. But at the same time, there are films which are not really connected with the subject of war directly. And for example, the film which is in the program of Toronto International Film Festival is You Are Universe by Pavlo Ostrikov. It's about this space. It's a space road movie, so to say. So it has nothing to do with the war, but this is the generation of the directors who started his work, during the past 10 years, and who is already kind of on the map, and people know him, know our directors and our filmmakers already. So it's not I often hear from our audience, oh, it's not enough. We have to have films which are of the Hollywood level and so on and so forth, or at least French films. But it's really you have to be realistic and know what was invested in it, what kind of conditions we all have to work in, and it's actually a miracle that our films are still happening. And these two films in the program of Venice Film Festival, for example, they have no state funding at all. So that's also a miracle. They were done during this year since the full-scale Russian invasion to Ukraine. So it is kind of a miracle, and it's like doing films against all odds. So there is an interest, and film curators, they do want to hear to see films which will be telling war stories, actually, because this is something they don't know, and they want the audience to know more on a personal level, especially, not propaganda films again, but personal stories. And that's why there is this demand. But this is I'm talking about cinephiles again, and film festivals and film programs. But I recently had a conversation that in the entertainment business, for example, it's a different situation. They want something entertaining from Ukraine, and it changed.
Matt Damon playing Zelensky, please,
or something like that.
So let's go to the positive note. What do you think the optimal best case scenario future for Ukrainian movies? You are director of Ukrainian Film Academy. What do you think the future awaits us after the war, after maybe in more peaceful times when the state will be able to finance this movie, and maybe when we will be able to find financement for the movies somewhere abroad? What is the plan? Well,
it all depends how long the war will last, of course, because it's there are some cases of films which are taking part in the festivals or are in the cinemas. Most of them are films which started the production before the invasion, and then the industry cannot exist without the systematic support of the state. In our case, we are not US. It's totally different system in the US, but in Ukraine, in Europe, cinema has to be state funded. So it all depends how long the war will last, and therefore how much funds will we have to invest in cinema, in films, in film production, for example. But I should say that it should be systematic. It doesn't have to be a lot of money, but it should be systematic. And we have a lot of talented people, and we have to encourage them to make films about Ukraine. I'm not saying to return to Ukraine, because that's also a big question. But those who chose to stay here, and they have to feel that they are needed, and they have to feel the support, and they have to have this environment which is a favorable environment to create. And that's the task for the state, to create this kind of conditions, and of course for all the filmmakers to lobby for that. and this is it. And because the talent will find its way, and there is an interest, and there is already differentiation of, okay, this is Ukrainian film, and there is a Ukrainian film director or actor or scriptwriter.
So yeah, dear viewers, especially from the West, you know the drill. Ukrainians have to fight the war. So if you have a spare 340,000 Canadian dollars or 250,358 American dollars, and you're looking where to spend it on if you're looking for a movie, we have a very nice people telling you that, you should invest here, and we will make cool stuff, because we already have cool stuff on international festivals that are there. So don't spend money on that. Spend money on the Ukrainian movies, which are good. Also, please subscribe to this channel. We are not making movies, but we are making videos, and we desperately need your support. Also, please share this video on your social media. Like this video. Write in the comments, have you seen the movie? Maybe you're a movie fan and you just went to the any film festival really and saw Russians at War. Let us know what you think about it.
Thank you, Julia.
Yeah, thank you for having a conversation with us. By the way, this Toronto Ukrainian television is in no shape or form affiliated with the Toronto International Film Festival. I should have said this at the beginning.
On every day, but not today. Today
but
it's
not
affiliated.
Today, yeah.
Today it's wholly about Toronto.
Yeah. Okay, great, guys. Thank you for watching us today, and we will see you next week.